The cargo bay doors hissed open and rough hands shoved Marcus Chen forward. He stumbled but kept his balance, his worn boots scraping against the metal floor. Around him, alien soldiers laughed, their voices harsh and mocking. "Look at this one," said a tall reptilian creature with dark green scales. So small, so weak, no claws, no armor, not even proper teeth. The alien leaned closer, his yellow eyes examining Marcus like a scientist might study an insect. "How did your species ever survive?" Marcus said nothing. He kept his head down, his face calm. He had learned long ago that silence often told him more than words ever could. The aliens marched him through their massive warship. Other prisoners lined the corridors in cages, creatures from a dozen different worlds. Some growled, some whimpered, some just stared with empty eyes. Marcus took note of everything he saw, every turn, every guard station, every weak point in their security. They brought him to a large chamber where a commander waited on a raised platform. The reptilian was bigger than the others, with red markings along his scales and scars that spoke of many battles. His eyes held a cruel intelligence. "I am Commander Zixthor of the Draken Empire," the alien announced, his voice booming through the chamber. "You are Marcus Chen, a human. Your mining colony resisted our claim to the asteroid belt. That resistance has ended. Your people are now subjects of the Galactic Council." Marcus finally looked up. His dark eyes met the commander's gaze without fear. "The Council doesn't rule human space." Zixthor's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Human space? Your kind controls barely 20 systems. We control thousands. You are insects pretending to be lions." "Maybe," Marcus said quietly, "but insects can bite." The commander's laughter echoed through the chamber. Other aliens joined in, a chorus of mockery. "This one has spirit. I like that. It makes what comes next more entertaining." Zixthor descended from his platform and circled Marcus slowly. "Do you know what we do with species that resist? We test them. We see if they are strong enough to earn our respect, or weak enough to be properly crushed." He gestured to a large view screen on the wall. It flickered to life, showing a massive cell below the ship. The space was huge, maybe 50 meters across, with walls of reinforced metal. Scorch marks covered every surface. In the center, 3 enormous creatures lay sleeping. Marcus's heart stopped for just a moment, but he kept his face still. The creatures were dragons, real dragons. Each one was at least 10 meters long, with scales that shimmered between red and black. Wings folded against their sides. Smoke drifted from their nostrils even in sleep. Their bodies bore scars and chains that had been cut away, leaving marks on their scales. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Zixthor said, watching Marcus's face carefully. "We found them on Pyros 4, a volcanic world on the edge of Council space. They've killed 47 warriors from various species. The strongest, the bravest, the most skilled, all dead within minutes." The commander's clawed hand rested on Marcus's shoulder. "We throw criminals into that cell. Enemies who need to be made examples of. Sometimes we throw in warriors who boast too much just to teach humility to their people." Marcus finally spoke. "And you're going to throw me in there?" "Yes." Zixthor seemed delighted. "The crew needs entertainment. We've been in space too long. Watching a human face the beasts of Pyros will lift spirits. We're taking bets on how long you'll survive. Most say less than 1 minute. I'm more generous. I give you 2 minutes, maybe 3 if you run fast." Other aliens gathered now, drawn by the promise of violence. They pressed against the viewing windows, pointing at Marcus and making sounds that might have been laughter. Some held datapads, placing their wagers. None bet on the human surviving. 2 guards grabbed Marcus's arms. They were strong, but Marcus didn't resist. He let them drag him toward the elevator that led down to the cell. As they moved, he closed his eyes briefly and took a deep breath. How long had it been? 15 years since he'd last stood in the presence of dragons. 15 years since old Earth's destruction. 15 years of wandering the stars, searching for survivors of the ancient order. And now in the worst possible circumstances, he'd found them. The elevator descended. Marcus could feel the heat increasing as they went lower. The dragons needed warmth, needed the feeling of volcanic fire to truly thrive. The aliens had gotten that much right at least, even if they understood nothing else. The doors opened to a small platform above the cell. The 3 dragons still slept below, but even from here, Marcus could feel something he hadn't felt in years. A presence, an ancient power that called to something deep in his blood. "Any last words, human?" Zixthor asked from a speaker above. Marcus looked up at the viewing windows where dozens of aliens watched. He found the commander's face in the crowd. "Just one question," Marcus said. "Have you ever asked yourself why creatures like these exist on so many worlds? Dragons, or things like dragons, on volcanic planets, ice worlds, and deep oceans. Haven't you wondered?" Zixthor laughed. "They are beasts. Dangerous beasts. Nothing more." "Maybe," Marcus said softly. "Or maybe you should have studied your prisoners more carefully before you locked them up." The platform beneath Marcus's feet opened. He dropped 20 feet and landed hard on the cell floor, rolling to absorb the impact. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he pushed it aside and stood up. The 3 dragons woke immediately. Their heads rose, eyes opening to show pupils that glowed like molten metal. The largest one, a female covered in old scars, looked directly at Marcus. The second, a male with broken horns, began to growl. The third, younger and smaller, tilted its head as if confused. Above, the aliens cheered and shouted. Their voices echoed through the cell. Marcus stood perfectly still. He didn't run. He didn't scream. He simply waited. The female dragon rose to her feet. She was magnificent. Despite her scars and the clear signs of mistreatment, she stood at least 12 meters tall when her head was raised. Heat radiated from her scales. Her mouth opened, showing teeth like swords. The male circled to Marcus's left. The younger one moved right. They surrounded him, cutting off any escape. Not that there was anywhere to run. Marcus slowly raised his right hand. The movement was careful, deliberate. He turned his palm toward the female dragon. Then he spoke. The language was old, older than the starships above, older than human civilization itself. It came from a time when Earth was young and dragons ruled its skies. The words were guttural, like rocks grinding together, like fire breathing through ancient caves. The 3 dragons froze. Marcus spoke again. The same phrase, letting the ancient syllables roll off his tongue. He had practiced these words every day for 15 years, afraid he might forget them. The female dragon's eyes widened. Her head lowered slightly, and she took one careful step forward. Then another. Above, the aliens' cheering began to fade. Confusion replaced their bloodlust. Marcus rolled up his right sleeve, revealing his forearm. The skin there bore marks that looked like burn scars, but they formed deliberate patterns. Spirals and lines that told a story in a language without words. These were the marks of his order, placed there when he was barely 20 years old, burned into his flesh with dragon fire in a ceremony that few humans had ever witnessed. The female dragon saw the marks. She made a sound, low and rumbling, that shook dust from the walls. Then slowly she bowed her head. The silence from above was complete. The female dragon's massive head lowered until her snout was just inches from Marcus's outstretched hand. Her breath washed over him, hot and smelling of sulfur and ancient fire. Her eyes, glowing like molten gold, studied him with an intelligence that the aliens above had never recognized. Marcus kept his hand steady. His voice was soft now, speaking in the old tongue. He told her his name. He told her that he was a keeper. He told her that he remembered. The dragon's eyes closed for a moment. When they opened again, something like recognition flickered there. She pressed her snout against his palm, and Marcus felt the heat of her scales. It was like touching the side of a furnace, but he didn't pull away. This was the greeting of dragons, the first step of the ancient bond. The male dragon, the one with broken horns, growled uncertainly. He took a step forward, then stopped. His eyes moved between Marcus and the female as if asking a question. Marcus turned to face him. He spoke again in the old tongue, his voice firm but respectful. The male dragon's head tilted. Then slowly, he too approached. The youngest dragon, barely half the size of the others, made a high-pitched sound almost like a question. Marcus smiled and beckoned. The young one practically ran over, its movements more puppy-like than predatory. It sniffed at Marcus eagerly, and he ran his hand along its snout. Above them, chaos had broken out among the aliens. Voices shouted in a dozen languages. Commander Zixthor was screaming orders into his communication device. Marcus ignored them. He had more important things to do. He sat down on the scorched floor of the cell, cross-legged. The 3 dragons settled around him. The female, who Marcus had already started thinking of as Ember, curled her massive body in a protective semicircle. The male, Ashclaw as Marcus named him in his mind, lay to the left. The young one, Soot, practically climbed into Marcus's lap, or as much as a dragon the size of a small vehicle could. Where did you learn that? Zixthor's voice boomed through speakers. How are you controlling them? Marcus looked up at the viewing window where he could see the commander's face, twisted with confusion and anger. I'm not controlling them. That's what you never understood. He stood up and the dragons moved with him, staying close. Marcus walked to the center of the cell where he knew the sound would carry best. These aren't Pyros beasts, Marcus said, his voice calm and clear. They're from Earth, my Earth, the world that died 15 years ago. Zixthor laughed, but it sounded forced. Impossible. We found them in ancient ruins on Pyros IV. They've been there for centuries. Yes, Marcus agreed. Centuries. Do you know what happened centuries ago? Humans sent out the Exodus ships. When our world started dying, we tried to save what we could. We sent colony ships to dozens of systems. But we also sent other ships. Special ships carrying eggs. He gestured to the dragons around him. Dragon eggs. Placed in stasis pods and shot toward worlds where they might survive. Volcanic planets. Hot planets. Places where dragons could wake up and live even if no humans were there to care for them. The young dragon Soot made a chirping sound and pressed against Marcus's side. He scratched behind the ridge of scales on its head and it rumbled with pleasure. My people and dragons have been bonded for thousands of years, Marcus continued. We don't own them. We don't control them. We're partners. Family. The Order of Dragon Keepers existed to maintain that bond, to remember the old ways, to speak the old language. Through the speakers, Marcus could hear frantic conversations. Scientists and xenobiologists were being summoned. Someone was pulling up star charts and comparing them to human space. Marcus knelt down and rolled up both sleeves now. More burn marks covered his arms, each one telling a story. These marks are made with dragon fire. Each one represents a lesson learned, a bond strengthened. I received my first mark when I was 20 years old, from a dragon named Typhon on Old Earth. I received my last mark the day before Earth died, from Typhon's mate Cinder. Ember, the female dragon, made a low sound that rumbled through the floor. Marcus turned to her and spoke in the old tongue. She responded, not with words, but with images that flowed directly into his mind. It was part of the bond, the way dragons and keepers communicated when words weren't enough. Marcus saw through her memories. He saw her egg warm and protected in a stasis pod. He saw the pod opening on a world of fire and rock. He saw her and her brothers and sisters growing, learning to hunt, learning to fly. He saw them waiting, some deep instinct telling them that someone would come, someone who spoke the old words. But instead of keepers, the aliens came. They captured the dragons one by one using weapons and nets and tricks. They put them in cages. They made them fight. Many dragons died. Ember's brothers and sisters were gone. Only she, Ashclaw, and Soot remained. Tears ran down Marcus's face as he experienced her pain, her confusion, her rage. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry it took me this long to find you. Ember pressed her head against his chest, as gentle as a creature her size could be. She understood. Dragons always understood. Marcus looked back up at the viewing window. His tears were gone now, replaced by something harder. You asked how my species survived, Commander Zixthor. You wondered why we don't have claws or armor or natural weapons. I'll tell you why we survived. He placed his hand on Ember's scales. We survived because we learned to make friends instead of slaves. We survived because we formed bonds with creatures like these, and those bonds made us both stronger. We survived because when we find something magnificent, we don't try to cage it. We try to understand it. Ashclaw rose to his feet and moved to stand beside Marcus. Soot did the same. All three dragons flanked the human, their heads raised high, their eyes glowing. These dragons have been waiting for 300 years, Marcus said, waiting for someone who knew the old words, someone who could explain why they were sent away from their home, someone who could tell them they weren't forgotten. He began to speak in the old tongue again, but this time it wasn't a greeting. It was something deeper, the ritual words of the bonding ceremony. Marcus had never performed this ceremony himself. He had only watched once when he was a young student, but he remembered every word, every gesture. The burn marks on his arms began to glow, not brightly but enough to see, a soft orange light, like embers in a dying fire coming back to life. The dragons responded. Their scales shimmered. Their eyes blazed brighter. Heat filled the cell, and Marcus felt something ancient and powerful flowing between them. A connection, a promise, a bond that went deeper than words or thoughts. Zixthor was shouting something, but Marcus couldn't hear him anymore. The bond filled his mind. He could feel what the dragons felt, their strength, their rage at captivity, their joy at finally being recognized, and underneath it all their memories of Earth, passed down through generations in their very blood. They remembered blue skies and green mountains. They remembered human cities where dragons and keepers walked together. They remembered the old partnership, the old friendship. When the ritual was complete, Marcus opened his eyes. He felt different, stronger, more aware. He could sense each dragon's presence like a warm pressure in his mind. He knew that from now until death they would be connected. He looked up at the viewing window one more time. Commander Zixthor stared down at him, and for the first time there was fear in the alien's eyes. "You wanted to know if humans deserve respect," Marcus said quietly. "Let me ask you something, Commander. How many dragons have you captured across your empire?" Zixthor didn't answer. Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I already know. I can feel them. All of them. Every dragon you've caged, every dragon you've chained, every dragon you've forced to fight. Through this bond they can feel me too, and they're waking up." Across the warship, alarms began to sound. The alarms screamed through the ship, red lights flashing in the corridors. Commander Zixthor's command center erupted into chaos as reports flooded in from across the fleet. "Sir, the dragons in Bay 7 are awake and agitated." "Commander, the arena beasts on warship Talon are breaking their restraints. All dragon specimens showing unusual behavior, sir. Heart rates elevated, body temperatures rising." Zixthor slammed his fist on the console. "Seal all dragon containment areas. Triple the guards. I want heavy weapons on every cell." But even as he gave orders, he kept looking at the screen showing Marcus Chen standing calmly in the cell. 3 dragons surrounding him like loyal guardians. The human looked up at the camera, and his expression was perfectly peaceful. "Commander?" Marcus's voice came through the speakers. "You should stop. You're only going to make this worse." "What did you do?" Zixthor demanded. "What kind of human trick is this?" "No trick," Marcus said. He was sitting again, leaning against Ember's side like she was a warm wall. "Just the truth. Dragons aren't animals. They're not beasts. They're intelligent, emotional, and they can communicate over vast distances when they share a bond." A new officer rushed into the command center, a thin insect-like alien carrying a data pad. "Commander, the xenobiology team has finished their analysis. The genetic markers in the Pyrrho specimens match samples from dead worlds in human space. Sir, the human is telling the truth. These creatures originated on Earth." Zixthor's scales paled slightly. "That's impossible. We found them in ruins that are 300 years old." 300 years ago, Earth was still alive," Marcus called out as if he could hear their conversation. Perhaps through the bond with the dragons he could sense their confusion. "That was when the Great Dying began. When we knew our world was failing, we sent out everything we could save, including dragons." The officer approached Zixthor nervously. "Sir, there's more. We found similar ruins on 17 other worlds, all volcanic or high-heat environments, all containing these creatures or evidence of them, and all along paths that match human exodus ship trajectories." Marcus stood and walked to the center of the cell. The 3 dragons moved with him, their movements synchronized like they were all part of one being. In a way they were now. "You've been finding dragons for decades," Marcus said. "Capturing them, using them in your arenas and zoos. You thought you were collecting exotic beasts, but you were really taking Earth's children. And now they know there's a keeper alive, someone who speaks their language, someone who understands them." Soot, the youngest dragon, chirped and rubbed its head against Marcus's shoulder. He smiled and scratched under its chin. The gesture was so casual, so full of affection, that it made the watching aliens uncomfortable. "This wasn't how you treated a monster. How many?" Zixthor asked finally, his voice quiet. "How many dragons do we have?" An analyst checked their console. "Across the fleet and our territories, sir? 47 confirmed specimens, plus another 33 that were lost in various incidents or released because they were too dangerous." 80 dragons, Marcus said softly. 80 of Earth's guardians scattered across your empire. Some in cages, some in arenas, some probably dead by now, all of them far from home, confused and alone. He placed his hand on Ember's scales. Through the bond he could feel the others. They were distant, like voices calling from far away, but he could sense them. Their pain, their isolation, their anger. "Commander, may I tell you a story?" Marcus asked. He didn't wait for an answer. 10,000 years ago, humans were afraid of dragons. We saw them as demons, as destroyers. We hunted them. We killed them. We almost made them extinct. Ashclaw rumbled, a sound like distant thunder. Marcus nodded to him, acknowledging the pain in that history. But one day, a human woman found a dragon egg. The mother was dead, killed by hunters. The egg was cold, dying. The woman could have left it. Should have left it, by the laws of her people. But she didn't. She took it home. She kept it warm. She fed the baby dragon when it hatched. She protected it. Marcus's voice was soft now, remembering lessons from his youth. That baby dragon grew. It could have killed the woman at any time. Could have eaten her livestock, burned her village. But it didn't. It stayed with her. Protected her. When raiders attacked her village, the dragon drove them away. When famine came, it hunted for her. They became family. A nice story, Zixthor said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's not a story, Commander. It's history. That woman was named Chen Li. She was my ancestor 40 generations back. That dragon was named Starfire. Every dragon alive today carries her bloodline, and every keeper carries Chen Li's blood. The bond between our species isn't magic. It's 10,000 years of friendship. The command center had gone quiet. Even the alarm seemed to have faded to background noise. Everyone was listening. When Earth died, Marcus continued, the last keepers made a choice. We could have kept the dragons with us, kept them in our colony ships. But that wouldn't have been fair. Dragons need heat, need open skies, need room to fly. So we sent them away to worlds where they could thrive. We hoped that someday someone would find them. Keepers who remembered the old ways. Humans who still spoke the old tongue. He looked directly at the camera. I've been searching for 15 years. I'm one of maybe a dozen keepers left alive. We scattered to different parts of the galaxy. All of us looking for the dragons we saved. I've been hauling freight, traveling from system to system, listening for rumors of dragons or creatures like them. You let yourself be captured, Zixthor said, understanding dawning. When our scouts raided that mining station, you could have escaped. But you heard we had dragons on our ships? Yes, Marcus admitted. I let your soldiers take me. I let you mock me and parade me through your ship. I waited for you to show me what you'd captured. And when I saw these three, he touched Ember's side gently, I knew I was where I needed to be. Another alarm sounded, this one different. A proximity alert, Commander, an officer shouted. We have incoming. Multiple objects approaching from hyperspace. Zixthor pulled up a display. His eyes widened. Ships? Negative, sir. They're flying under their own power. No engine signatures. Just heat and, sir, they're dragons. Dozens of them converging on our position. Marcus smiled. Through the bond, he had already felt them coming. Dragons from the closest ships in the fleet, breaking free of their cages and flying through space toward the source of the call. Dragons could survive in vacuum for short periods, could navigate by sensing heat and magnetic fields. Now they were following the bond, following the promise that someone understood them. You should open the hangar bays, Marcus suggested. If they have to tear through the hull to get in, it's going to cause a lot of damage. This is insane, Zixthor muttered. But he saw the approaching dragons on his screens, saw how fast they were moving, saw the determination in their flight. He made a decision. Open bays 12 through 15, activate atmospheric shields, and someone get me the human containment coordinator. Within minutes, the first dragons arrived. They crashed through the atmospheric shields and landed in the hangar bays with earth-shaking force. They were different sizes, different colors. Some were scarred from arena fights. Some looked thin and malnourished. But all of them had the same wild hope in their eyes. Marcus felt each one as they arrived, felt their confusion turning to joy as they sensed a keeper nearby. Through Ember, Ashclaw, and Soot, he sent them messages of peace, of safety, of welcome. In his cell, Marcus sat down again. The three dragons curled around him protectively. Above, he could hear the sounds of more dragons landing, hear the shouts of alien soldiers who didn't know whether to attack or run. Commander Zixthor, Marcus called out. I'm going to offer you something, a choice. You can treat this as an attack. Try to fight us, try to regain control of your dragons. Or you can listen. You can learn. You can understand that there are bonds in this universe stronger than chains or cages. And if I choose to fight? Zixthor asked. Marcus looked at the three dragons around him, then extended his awareness through the bond to all the others now gathering in the hangar bays above. He felt their strength, their power, their readiness. Then you'll lose, Marcus said simply. Not because humans are strong, but because we're never alone. We make friends, Commander. Real friends. The kind who come when you call even after 300 years. The kind who remember. The kind who never give up. Through the bond, Marcus sent out another call. Not urgent this time, just a greeting, a promise. And across the galaxy on 47 ships and stations, the remaining dragons heard him and began to answer. Marcus closed his eyes and let the bond fill his awareness. He could feel dragons across vast distances now, their presence like distant stars in his mind. Each one was unique. Each one carried pain and hope in equal measure. He stood in the center of his cell and began the ancient ritual. It was called the Keeper's Call, a ceremony that hadn't been performed in nearly 200 years. The last time it was used, old Earth still lived and thousands of dragons answered. Now there were only 80 left and Marcus had to reach them all. He raised both arms, palms up, and spoke in the old tongue. The words were complex, layered with meaning that normal language couldn't express. He called to the dragons' ancestors, to their genetic memory, to the bond that connected all of their kind to all keepers. Ember, Ashclaw, and Soot joined their voices to his. The sound shook the walls. It carried through the ship's metal corridors, through the vacuum of space, through the bond itself. On 47 different ships and stations, dragons that had been sleeping suddenly woke. Dragons that had been pacing their cages stopped and listened. Dragons that had been fighting in arenas turned their heads toward the source of the call. They remembered, not with their minds, but with something deeper. Blood memory, soul memory, the memory of 10,000 years of partnership with humans, the memory of Chen-Li and Starfire, the memory of trust, and they answered. Commander Zixthor watched his command center dissolve into chaos. Reports flooded in from across the fleet, each one more alarming than the last. Warship Talon reporting, all 3 dragons in containment have broken free. They're tearing through bulkheads. Station 15 reports their arena dragon has killed 6 guards and is heading for the hull. Multiple dragon specimens showing coordinated behavior. They're not acting randomly, sir. They're working together. A tactical officer pulled up a star map. Red dots appeared across it, marking every location where dragons were breaking containment. Sir, they're all moving in the same direction. Toward us. Zixthor's claws dug into his console. How long until they arrive? Dragons nearest to us will reach our position in 6 minutes. The farthest ones will take several hours, but sir, the officer's voice trembled. They're not stopping. Nothing we do is stopping them. In his cell, Marcus felt each dragon as they broke free. He felt their anger, their determination, their desperate hope. Many had been alone for so long. Some had been captured as eggs and never known another of their kind. Now they felt the bond, felt the keeper, and nothing in the universe could stop them from reaching him. Commander, Marcus called out, you need to evacuate your combat personnel from the upper decks. When the dragons arrive, they won't mean to hurt anyone, but they're scared and they've been mistreated. Frightened dragons are dangerous. You expect me to abandon sections of my ship? Zixthor demanded. I expect you to save lives, Marcus replied. Your soldiers can't stop what's coming, but they don't need to die trying. For a long moment, the commander said nothing. Then, reluctantly, he gave the order. All combat teams fall back to defensive positions. Do not engage the incoming dragons unless they attack first. Science teams, get to the observation decks. I want to know everything about what's happening. The first wave of dragons arrived minutes later. They came from 4 different ships, having torn through hulls and flown through open space. Their scales were scarred and burned from laser fire as guards had tried to stop them, but they didn't slow down. They crashed into Zixthor's ship with tremendous force, ripping through the hangar shields. One was a massive red male, easily twice Ember's size. Another was a sleek female with blue-tinted scales, unusual for fire dragons. 2 more were juveniles, smaller but incredibly fast. Marcus felt them land. Through the bond, he sent them reassurance, guidance, peace. They responded with images and emotions, joy, relief, a desperate need to reach him. Open the cell, Marcus said. Let me go to them. Absolutely not, Zixthor snapped. You stay right where you are. Commander, those dragons have been caged and hurt for years. They're not going to be gentle if they have to tear through your ship to reach me. But if I can meet them in the hangar, I can calm them. I can help them, Ember roared, the sound echoing through the entire ship. It wasn't a threat. It was a plea. Zixthor hesitated. Then he made a decision. Fine, but you're going to be surrounded by guards. And if this is a trick, It's not a trick, Marcus said quietly. It's a reunion. The cell door opened. Marcus walked out, flanked by Ember, Ashclaw, and Soot. A dozen heavily armed guards surrounded them, but their weapons were lowered. They looked terrified. As Marcus walked through the corridors, he saw other prisoners in their cells. Humans. He recognized some from the mining station. They stared at him in shock as he passed, a human walking freely with 3 dragons following him like loyal dogs. One prisoner, a young woman named Sarah, called out, "Marcus, what's happening?" He stopped and looked at her. "We're going home, Sarah, all of us. Just wait a little longer." The guards didn't stop him from talking. They seemed too stunned to do anything but follow. They reached the hangar bay and the doors opened to reveal chaos. 20 dragons filled the space, more arriving every minute. They roared and called to each other, their voices mixing into a symphony of reunion. Some were fighting over space. Others were curled in corners, overwhelmed by the presence of so many of their kind after years of isolation. Marcus stepped into the hangar, and silence fell. 20 pairs of glowing eyes turned to him. 20 dragons, each carrying the pain of captivity and the desperate hope of freedom, looked at the human standing before them. Marcus spread his arms wide and spoke in the old tongue. He told them who he was. He told them he was a keeper, one of the last. He told them that Earth was gone, but Earth's children still remembered. He told them they were not forgotten, not abandoned, not alone. The massive red male approached first. He lowered his huge head until it was level with Marcus's chest. The man reached out slowly and placed his hand on the dragon's snout. Heat radiated from the scales, almost painful, but Marcus didn't flinch. Through the bond, he felt the dragon's story. Captured as a juvenile on a volcanic moon, forced to fight in arenas for 15 years, made to kill other creatures for entertainment. Broken and remade by pain. "I see you," Marcus whispered. "I understand." "It's over now," the dragon's eyes closed. A low rumble came from deep in its chest, not quite a growl, not quite a purr. Relief. One by one, the other dragons approached. Marcus greeted each one, touched each one, spoke to each one. Some were aggressive, testing him, seeing if he was real or another trick. He stood firm, unafraid. Others were timid, having been hurt too much to trust easily. He was patient, gentle. Hours passed. More dragons arrived, filling every available space in the hangar. The guards had long since backed away, recognizing that they were witnessing something beyond their understanding. Commander Zixthor watched from the observation deck above. His second-in-command, a female draken named Sylith, stood beside him. "This is unprecedented," she said quietly. "That one human is controlling dozens of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy." "He's not controlling them," Zixthor said, finally understanding. "They're choosing to follow him." That's the difference. Below, Marcus stood surrounded by dragons. They formed a living wall around him, protective and loyal. He was exhausted, the mental strain of maintaining bonds with so many dragons pushing him to his limits. But he kept going. Through the bond, he felt more coming. Dragons from the far edges of council space, flying through the void, following the call. They would arrive in hours or days, but they were coming. All of them were coming home. Marcus looked up at the observation deck, found Zixthor's eyes, and spoke loud enough for the intercom to pick up. "Commander, we need to talk. Not as prisoner and captor. Not as enemies. We need to talk about what comes next. Because there are 80 dragons on their way here, and you need to decide if you're going to welcome them or fight them. One choice leads to peace. The other leads to war. And I promise you, Commander, you don't want a war with dragons and the humans who love them." Ember roared her agreement, and 40 dragons joined their voices to hers. The sound was thunder, was earthquake, was the voice of ancient Earth itself calling from beyond death. In his comfortable command center, surrounded by weapons and soldiers, Commander Zixthor of the mighty Draken Empire felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear, but also underneath it, something else. Something that might have been respect. The meeting took place in the largest cargo bay on the ship, the only space big enough for dragons. Commander Zixthor entered with an honor guard of his best soldiers, but Marcus noticed their weapons were lowered. They had learned that lesson at least. Marcus stood with Ember at his side, Ashclaw and Soot flanking them. Behind him, 40 dragons filled the bay, their presence overwhelming. More were still arriving, emerging from hyperspace and landing on the ship's hull, waiting for permission to enter. "You wanted to talk," Zixthor said, his voice carefully neutral. "So talk." Marcus stepped forward. He was tired, so tired. Maintaining bonds with this many dragons was exhausting his mind and body, but he couldn't stop now. Too much depended on what happened next. "I want 3 things," Marcus said. "First, freedom for all humans you've captured. Every prisoner, every slave, every conquered colonist, they go free." Zixthor's scales darkened with anger. "You're in no position to make demands." "Actually, I am." Marcus gestured to the dragons around him. "You've seen what 40 dragons can do when they work together. There are 40 more on their way. And beyond that, Commander, there are humans. Millions of humans across 20 systems. We've been quiet, peaceful, keeping to ourselves. But we remember Earth. We remember what we lost. And now we've found our oldest friends again." He let that sink in. "You thought humans were weak because we don't have claws or armor, but we have something better. We have loyalty. We have memory. We make bonds that last generations. The dragons remember us, even after 300 years of separation. What do you think will happen when word spreads that dragons and humans are reunited?" A blue-scaled dragon behind Marcus roared softly, emphasizing his point. "Second," Marcus continued, "you will recognize the sovereignty of human space. No more raids. No more claiming systems that humans have settled. We want peace, but we'll defend our territory." Zixthor was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "And third? Third, you return every dragon you've captured, all of them. No more zoos, no more arenas, no more using them as weapons or entertainment. They're not animals. They're intelligent beings who deserve respect." "They're dangerous," Zixthor protested. "Without containment, without control, without abuse in cages, you mean?" Marcus interrupted. "Yes, they're dangerous, so are you. So am I in the right circumstances. But danger isn't the same as evil. Dragons are only violent when they're hurt or threatened. Treat them with respect, and they'll respond with respect." One of Zixthor's advisors stepped forward. "And what will you do with 80 dragons, human? Where will you take them?" Marcus smiled. "I'm going to rebuild the dragon keeps, find a world with the right conditions and create a sanctuary, a place where dragons can live freely, where keepers can train, where we can remember the old ways and build new ones." "You're one man," the advisor scoffed. "One man can't possibly." "He's not just one man." The new voice came from the hangar entrance. Every head turned. A figure stood in the doorway, backlit by the corridor lights. As they stepped forward, Marcus's heart nearly stopped. The man was old, his dark skin weathered and scarred. He wore clothes that marked him as a spacer, but his arms bore burn marks identical to Marcus's. His eyes were the eyes of someone who had seen centuries, though he couldn't be more than 70. "Master Jin," Marcus breathed, hardly believing it. "I thought you were dead." "Not yet, boy," the old man said, smiling. "I felt the call, felt it across half the galaxy. I was on a mining ship near the outer rim when every dragon in the sector started going crazy. I knew what it meant. I knew a keeper had found them." Jin approached and embraced Marcus. The younger man felt tears on his face. "I've been alone for so long. I thought I was the last." "Never the last," Jin said gently. "Just scattered. But I'm not the only one coming. I sent word through the old channels, the emergency codes we established after the Exodus. There are 9 other keepers still alive, Marcus. 9, and they're all on their way." The news hit Marcus like a physical blow. 9 others. 10 keepers total. It wasn't many, not compared to the thousands that had existed on old Earth. But it was more than he'd dared hope for. Behind Jin, more figures appeared. Humans. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Former prisoners from Zixthor's fleet, freed by the chaos of the Dragon Awakening. But also others. Colonists who'd heard about what was happening and demanded to be brought here. Young people with fire in their eyes wanting to learn the old ways. And at the back of the crowd, Walking slowly but with immense dignity, came something that made every dragon in the bay roar in recognition. It was a dragon, but unlike any of the others. It was ancient, easily 3 times the size of the largest dragon present. Its scales were deep black with streaks of silver, like night sky filled with stars. Scars covered its body, each one telling a story of centuries lived. Its eyes were pools of amber wisdom. Marcus knew those eyes. He'd seen them in his memories, in his dreams, in the stories passed down through his family. Typhon, he whispered. The ancient dragon entered the bay, and every other dragon lowered their heads in respect. This was a first dragon, one of the originals from old Earth, one of the 20 that had started the bond with humans 10,000 years ago. Typhon moved slowly, his massive body filling the space. He approached Marcus, each step deliberate. The young keeper stood frozen, overwhelmed. The dragon lowered his great head until it was level with Marcus's chest. Then, in a voice that rumbled like mountains breaking, Typhon spoke. Not in dragon language, not in the old tongue, but in words that Marcus could understand, words that every person in the bay could hear. Keeper Chen, the dragon said, and his voice carried the weight of ages. I am pleased. You have done well. Marcus's legs gave out. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I tried to find them all. I tried to remember everything you taught me. You did more than remember, Typhon said. You kept faith. You kept the bond alive when all others thought it dead. You are worthy of the title you carry. Marcus looked up, confused. What title? Master Jin spoke from behind him. You never asked how I knew to come here, boy. You never asked how I contacted the other keepers so quickly. It's because you activated the old emergency codes, the ones only a dragon lord can use. But I'm not. Marcus started to protest. You are, Jin interrupted. The moment you bonded. With 3 dragons simultaneously you became a dragon lord. That ritual hasn't been performed in 200 years. There were only 5 dragon lords on old Earth when it died, and all of them perished with their dragons. You're the first dragon lord of the new age, Marcus Chen. The implications crashed over him. Dragon lords weren't just keepers. They were leaders of the order, capable of bonding with dozens of dragons at once, able to coordinate dragon flights across vast distances. They were the bridge between human and dragon civilizations. I don't know how, Marcus said weakly. You already know, Typhon rumbled. You performed the Keeper's call. You bonded with 40 dragons in one day. You led them here, united them. You were born for this, child of Chen Li's line. Commander Zixthor cleared his throat, drawing attention back to himself. This is all very touching, but it doesn't change the situation. You're still on my ship, surrounded by my fleet. Typhon's head swiveled to face the commander, the ancient dragon's eyes fixed on the alien, and Zixthor took an involuntary step back. Commander of the small empire, Typhon said, his voice carrying contempt. You have made many mistakes. You captured children of Earth. You hurt them. You broke the ancient laws of the bond. But you are given one chance, one opportunity to make right what you have done wrong. And if I refuse? Zixthor asked, trying to sound brave. Then war, Typhon said simply. Not war between dragons and your ships. War between dragons and Draken. We are patient. We live long. We remember. We will find your home world. We will find every Draken colony. And we will show you what dragons can truly do when they wish to make war. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Zixthor bowed his head. What would you have me do? Marcus stood, wiping his eyes. Release the prisoners, all of them, recognize human sovereignty, and help us find a world for the Dragon Keep, a place with volcanic activity, room for dragons to fly, and space for humans to build. You help us establish it, and in return we'll offer something valuable. What? Zixthor asked suspiciously. Knowledge, Marcus said. The things we learned in 10,000 years of partnership with dragons. Medical techniques from dragon biology. Materials science from dragon scales. Energy systems inspired by dragonfire. We learned so much, and we lost most of it when Earth died. But some of us remember. We'll share that knowledge with the Council, not as subjects, but as partners, as equals. He looked around at the dragons, at the humans, at the alien commander. That's what Earth learned, Commander. The strongest bonds aren't made through conquest. They're made through mutual respect, through shared goals, through choosing to work together. We're offering you that choice. For a long moment, Zixthor said nothing. Then, slowly, he extended his clawed hand in the human gesture of greeting. Marcus took it. 3 months later, Marcus stood on the highest peak of a volcanic world the Council had granted to the new Dragon Keep. The air was warm, rich with the smell of sulfur and growing things.